My name is Dorothea Vane Quillsworth. I am 82 years old, and I have spent the better part of my life distrusting people who claim to have seen things the rest of us cannot see. I was a soil chemist for 37 years. I measured what could be measured. I trusted what could be weighed. If you had told me, even 18 months ago, that I would one day write these words, I would have offered you a polite smile and quietly moved my chair. But on the 3rd of February 2026, I stopped breathing for 5 minutes on the back porch of my farmhouse in Creel's Crossing, a speck of a town on the western edge of Nebraska that exists mainly as a reference point for wheat and weather. 5 minutes in which the body my husband Aldous called constitutionally indestructible finally disagreed with him. 5 minutes in which I was somewhere I have no scientific category for. And in that somewhere, I met someone. I understand what this costs me. I understand that credibility once spent on a claim like this one does not return. I am prepared to be poor. Let me tell you who I was before, because the before matters. I grew up the daughter of a surveyor and a seamstress in a household that treated facts the way other families treated scripture. My father, Ormond Vane, believed that the universe would yield its secrets to anyone patient enough to measure it correctly. My mother, Celestine, who sewed wedding dresses and burial clothes with equal care, told me once that the universe had secrets it would only yield to those willing to stand still and be changed by them. I thought she was being poetic. I spent 50 years learning she was being precise. I married Aldous Quillsworth at 28. Later than most women of my generation in that part of Nebraska considered advisable. He was a hydrologist. We argued about water tables and fell in love over them. We had one son, Pemberton, and when Pemberton was 11, he was diagnosed with the kind of illness that reorders every priority a person has ever held. He survived. He is 51 now, in good health, living in Flagstaff with his husband and 2 adopted daughters. But those years of his illness hollowed something out of me that never fully refilled. I stopped believing in the benevolence of the universe somewhere around his 3rd surgery, and never entirely found my way back. Aldous died 6 years ago. Kidney failure, slow and unkind. He spent his last weeks talking about underground aquifers he had never managed to map. He died reaching for data he never got to collect. I thought that was exactly like him, and I thought it was the saddest thing I had ever seen. And I thought I would follow him within a year, because I could not imagine what I was supposed to do with myself on the other side of his absence. I did not follow him. I kept feeding the chickens. I kept testing soil samples for local farmers who paid me in vegetables and occasional cash. I kept reading scientific journals the way other people kept watching television, compulsively, for the sensation of being filled, even briefly, with something that felt like purpose. I did not attend church. I had not attended since Pemberton's illness. My relationship with the idea of God had settled into something like a formal diplomatic silence. I did not deny him. I simply refused to negotiate. The morning of the 3rd of February was ordinary in the specific way that precedes extraordinary events. Cold, as Nebraska in February always is, but clear. The particular blue of a winter sky that has nothing left to prove. I had been outside checking on the chickens and had paused, as I sometimes did, to stand at the porch railing and look at the fields. Stubble fields in February are not beautiful in any conventional sense, but I had come to love them for the honesty of them, stripped down, resting, not pretending to be more than they were. The sensation arrived without announcement. A compression in my chest unlike anything I had previously catalogued. My training told me immediately what it was. I thought, with the clinical precision of someone who spent decades in a laboratory, this is cardiac, this is serious. I should call Pemberton. I reached for the phone in my pocket, and then the phone was on the porch floor, and I was looking at the sky from an angle I had not chosen. The last sensation I remember is the cold of the wooden planks along the length of my spine, and the blue of the sky, and the strange, flat thought that the blue was exactly the color of the bowl Aldous used for his cereal. Then the pain dissolved, and I was somewhere that had no business existing. I say that as a scientist. The space I entered violated a significant number of physical laws and offered no apology for doing so. There was no horizon. There was no gravity in the way I understood gravity, though I was standing, or something so precisely like standing that the distinction collapsed. Light was present the way oxygen is present, not visible as a thing in itself, but the condition that made everything else possible. I was not wearing my coat. I was not cold. I was not 82 years old. That last fact arrived slowly, the way large facts do. I raised my hands and looked at them. The stiffness that had settled into my knuckles over the past decade was gone. The slight tremor in my left hand that I had mentioned to no physician, being unwilling to hear what it might mean, was gone. I rotated my neck, which for the previous 4 years had required careful management each morning, and felt nothing but ease. I was not afraid. I am still unable to fully account for this. I am a person who is afraid of quite a lot, of systemic failure, of incomplete data, of the specific loneliness that arrives at 3 in the morning and is not interested in reason. But in that place, fear had no available surface to cling to. The atmosphere itself was inhospitable to it. Then the awareness that I was not alone arrived, not as sound, as a shift in the quality of the light, the way a room changes when someone enters it. I turned. He was there. I will not dress this in more language than I have honestly earned. The being I encountered was not ambiguous. I did not wonder who he was. Identification came not through reasoning, but through something deeper than reasoning. Something that functioned the way recognition functions, but operating in registers I did not know I possessed. The closest I can come is this. You do not identify your own heartbeat by studying it. You simply know it. That was the quality of knowing. What I felt in his presence, and I choose this word with the care of someone who spent a career being precise about measurement, was the sensation of being completely and accurately seen. Not judged, seen. The two are entirely different experiences, and the difference is vast. He did not speak immediately. He looked at me the way my mother used to look at her unfinished work, not disappointed, not impatient, attentive, as though every detail mattered. "Dorothea," he said. My name in his voice sounded like the name of something important. Not famous. Important. The way the word for water in any language sounds like something essential. "I am dead," I said. It was not a question. "Your neighbor Harlan Fitch will hear you fall and call for help in less than 3 minutes. You will return. But first there are things I want to show you, and you are the right person to carry them." "Why me?" "Because you stopped believing carefully," he said. "Not carelessly. You measured your way to disbelief the same way you measured everything else, and the measurements you used were too small for the subject. That makes you useful. People who have doubted the way you have doubted will hear things from you they will not hear from someone who never doubted at all. He extended his hand, not to shake it, but in the way you gesture when you are inviting someone to look at something beside you. I looked. America spread below us, the whole of it, coast to coast, visible the way you see a specimen through a lens with the magnification set exactly right. I saw the geography I knew from maps and from satellite imagery, and I saw simultaneously something beneath the geography, something that cartographers have no tools for. What lay beneath was not darkness and light arranged tidily into opposing camps. It was more complex and more honest than that. It was every human being carrying, in varying proportions, the capacity for one and the capacity for the other, making 10,000 small decisions a day that weighted them incrementally toward one or the other without their fully realizing it. It is not a war, I said. It was never a war, he said. People find it easier to believe in wars. Wars have sides. What you are looking at has no sides. It has interior lives, billions of them. He directed my attention to the political surface of the country, and I saw something I want to describe with exactness, because imprecision here would be a form of dishonesty. I saw the figure of Trump at the center of enormous turbulence, not generating it, not resolving it, but functioning as a kind of instrument that made the turbulence visible. A seismograph does not create earthquakes, it records them. That was the image that came to me. What people feel when they encounter him, Jesus said, tells them something true about themselves if they are willing to examine it. The ones who worship him have found a shortcut to certainty and called it faith. The ones who despise him have found a shortcut to righteousness and called it conscience. Both shortcuts lead to the same destination, a life organized around something other than truth. And the truth, I asked, is always more expensive than the shortcut. That is precisely why it is the truth. He showed me 2026 laid out with the strange temporal flatness of that place. Not a prediction, but a landscape, a terrain of possibility, in which certain features were fixed and certain features depended entirely on choices not yet made. I saw what I can only describe as a sequence of fractures, not catastrophic collapses, but structural revelations. The way a crack in a wall shows you the wall was built wrong from the beginning and now invites you to build it right. Financial systems that had been presenting themselves as permanent would demonstrate they were not. Institutions that had organized themselves around the appearance of trust rather than its substance would find the appearance insufficient. Communities that had been substituting noise for conversation would discover they had things to say to each other they had been postponing for years. Catastrophic? I asked. This seemed like an important empirical question. It will feel catastrophic to those who confuse the structure with the foundation, he said. For those who already knew the difference, it will feel like permission. He showed me two distinct trajectories extending from where we stood, and I want to be precise about what distinguished them because I think precision matters here as much as it has ever mattered in my laboratory work. The first trajectory moved towards something I can only call coherence. Not agreement, not uniformity, but the specific coherence of a system in which the parts are functioning honestly. I saw congregations that had been performing spirituality, suddenly become incapable of the performance. Not through catastrophe, but through a kind of interior insistence, the way the body eventually demands sleep, regardless of the mind's objections. I saw political adversaries who had been so long organized around mutual hatred that they had lost the memory of what they actually believed, discovering that the hatred was the only thing holding them in formation, and without it, they were simply people with real problems looking for real solutions. The second trajectory moved toward a contraction. Fear calcifying into ideology. People finding in their certainties a shelter that was really a cage, though it required some time before the distinction became clear. Which is more likely, I asked. He looked at me with something I recognized. The expression of someone being asked to predict the outcome of an experiment that depends on variables the experimenter controls. I am not a prediction, he said. I am an offer. I have always been an offer. The probability of the first path is entirely a function of how many people choose to stop pretending. Stop pretending what? Stop pretending they are certain when they are not. Stop pretending they are righteous when they are merely angry. Stop pretending their faith is adequate when it has not survived honest examination. Stop pretending their doubts are resolved when those doubts are the most spiritually significant thing they possess. He paused. Your doubts, Dorothea, brought you to a more accurate understanding of the size of the universe than most believing people have. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. Incuriosity is. I thought about Aldous. I thought about the aquifers he was still reaching for at the end. I thought about a man who never stopped measuring and died still wanting to know more. And I thought that perhaps that quality, the insistence on more, the refusal to accept the preliminary data as final, was a form of faithfulness I had not previously recognized as such. The message, I said. What do you want me to tell people? He turned to face me fully, and I will say only this about what was in his expression. It was not the urgency of someone who feared they were running out of time. It was the urgency of someone who wants very much for a particular outcome to happen, because the outcome is good and its opposite is genuinely terrible. The difference is important. One is anxiety. The other is love with its eyes open. Tell them that 2026 will test what things are made of, not to punish the poorly made things, to give people the information they need to build better ones. Tell them that no political figure, including the one who currently functions as America's primary Rorschach test, is carrying any salvation they need. To treat any human being as either savior or apocalypse is to decline the actual invitation, which is to become the kind of person whose presence in the world produces something real. Tell them that the churches that are emptying are mostly emptying for good reasons, and the emptying is not the problem. The problem preceded the emptying. The people leaving are often leaving because they are hungry and were offered a performance instead of bread. The solution is not to make the performance more sophisticated. The solution is bread. Tell them that the doubt they are ashamed of is frequently the most honest thing about them, and that I work very well with honesty and very poorly with pretense. Tell them that the next 2 years will produce an unusual number of moments in which the habitual structure of a person's life is interrupted sufficiently that they find themselves in unscheduled silence, In those silences, if they are willing, something true can begin. I do not require grand conversion moments. I require willingness, in the specific quiet that follows disruption, to ask a sincere question and wait for an answer. He placed both hands briefly on my shoulders. The weight of them was entirely real and entirely unlike anything I have words for. You will not be believed by everyone, he said. I am a soil chemist from Creel's Crossing, Nebraska, I said. I would not believe me either. Something moved in his expression that I recognized, somehow, as laughter without its sound. That is exactly why you will reach the people you are supposed to reach, the ones who have made peace with not being believed. Those are frequently the only ones saying anything worth hearing. The pull began, inexorable, like a tide, not violent, but without negotiation. I am not finished asking questions, I said. You have 30 or 40 years of questions ahead of you, if you choose to use them that way, he said. Go. I went. The cold came back first, then the pain, then the specific rough texture of the porch planks against the side of my face, and the sound of Harlan Fitch's voice, my neighbor of 40 years, a taciturn corn farmer who has never in my memory raised his voice, shouting my name with a raw fear in it that I had never heard from him before and hoped never to hear again. I heard his boots on the steps. I heard him on the telephone. I heard myself from some distance making sounds that were not yet words. When I could open my eyes, I opened them. Harlan's face was above me, terrified and weathered, and I thought that his face was the finest thing I had seen since the light. Still here, I said. Jesus Christ, he said, meaning something different than I did. Yes, I said, more or less. I spent 9 days in the hospital in Kearney. My cardiologist, a composed and meticulous woman named Dr. Shrivastan, told me that the extent of my recovery was, in her professional assessment, at the outer edge of what she could account for. She said this the way scientists say things they cannot explain, with measured language and careful eyes. I recognized the look. I had worn it myself for decades. When Pemberton arrived on the second day, I told him everything. He sat in the vinyl chair beside my bed and listened without moving, his hands folded on his knees. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I never told Dad, but I prayed every night of my illness. I never stopped. I told myself it was irrational, and I kept doing it anyway. He looked at his hands. I kept doing it after, too, actually. I told him that sounded exactly right. So here is what I was sent back to say. For whatever it is worth, from a woman who spent most of her life as a committed empiricist and is now standing at the edge of a claim she cannot prove and will not retract. 2026 is not an ending. It is a diagnostic. The stresses that are coming are not punishments designed for suffering. They are tests of composition, the same tests I applied to soil samples for 37 years. You apply pressure to find out what something is made of. You find that out not to condemn the sample, but to know the truth of it. Donald Trump is not the hinge point of history. Neither is whoever you have appointed as his opposite. They are symptoms of a much older question, and the question is not political. The question is what you are trusting, and whether it deserves trust, and whether you have examined it honestly enough to know the difference. The disruptions coming are invitations to the silence that precedes honest questions. If you find yourself in that silence, do not rush to fill it. It is the most valuable real estate you have been given in years. The doubt you have been hiding from your congregation, from your family, from yourself, is not the enemy of something real. It may be the last honest thing you have left. That makes it worth something. I am 82 years old. I can offer you no credentials for this, except the 5 minutes I spent somewhere I cannot fully describe, in the presence of someone I cannot adequately explain, who handed me a task I did not ask for, and sent me back to this porch in Nebraska to carry it. I was not chosen for this because I am remarkable. I was chosen precisely because I am not, because the thing that happened to me can happen in any kitchen, on any porch, in any life that is willing, however imperfectly, to stand still long enough to be found. Stand still. Ask the sincere question. Let 2026 be what it is, not the end, not the vindication, not the catastrophe, but the beginning of a question that has been waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear it. My name is Dorothea Vane Quillsworth. I stopped breathing for 5 minutes on a February porch in Nebraska, and I came back with something to tell you. I have told it. What you do next is yours.